Welcome to Shatter.
Support the channel by liking, commenting, and subscribing. I promise even more interesting stories. 10 minutes before the toast, my entire marriage evaporated. It didn't happen in a fight or some tearful confession. It came in a single message from a stranger I'd never met. 3 words, 1 photo, and silence. Ask her tonight. We were at her company's annual gala. Black tie, chandeliers, a jazz quartet playing too softly to matter. She was hosting the stage, introducing donors, laughing with executives like she was born to own the room. And I stood at the edge of the crowd, a glass of bourbon in my hand, playing the role of the supportive husband. Until that message lit up my phone. I looked around instinctively. No one stared. No eyes on me. Just clinking glasses and shallow smiles. The photo was blurry but unmistakable. Her, in a hoodie, leaning against a parked SUV. A man's hand on her waist. His face turned just enough for me to recognize him. Matt, her coworker. The same guy she once called borderline creepy. The same one whose name she pretended to forget every time it came up. And suddenly, the dress she picked that night, sleek, low-cut, meant to stun, felt less like fashion and more like strategy. I didn't confront her. I didn't make a scene. I just stood there and let the noise fade around me. My heart didn't race. My fists didn't clench. Because the moment something breaks in silence, it stays broken. When she found me minutes later, she kissed my cheek like nothing had happened. Said the toast was about to start. Handed me a champagne flute. I looked at her and thought, this is the last lie you'll ever hand me in person. The rest will come through lawyers. The rest will come after I disappear. She raised her glass on stage. Spoke about vision, gratitude, the future we're building together. I watched the room clap. She didn't see me put my glass down, untouched. She didn't see me turn off my phone, or step out the side exit, or drop the keys to our shared car into the valet's hand and say, keep it. The last thing I heard was her laughter from the mic, just before I disappeared into the night. And by morning, our marriage would be over. Not loudly, just completely. By the time she finished her toast, I was already a shadow. I didn't go home. I didn't answer her messages. I left the gala before dessert, stepped into the night like I was stepping out of a role I never auditioned for. I checked into a hotel 15 minutes from our house, just far enough to be invisible, just close enough to watch the fallout. That night, I didn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling, replaying the photo. The hand on her waist. The way she leaned into it like she belonged there. The next morning, my phone had 5 missed calls. 2 voicemails. A text, "Where are you? Are you okay?" I didn't respond. Instead, I texted someone else. Nate. He's not just a friend. He's the one guy who always saw through the surface. He'd warned me once, months ago, about how close she and Matt had been looking at the company happy hour. I brushed it off. Said she was just networking. Now I knew. I asked Nate a simple question. You still got that client in digital forensics? 5 minutes later, he sent me a contact. By noon, I had access to a private investigator who specialized in recovering deleted data. Not to dig through her phone, but to dig through mine. You see, we shared accounts, calendars, cloud storage. She got sloppy, probably never thinking I'd look. I didn't tell him everything. Just gave the basics, paid up front, and let the silence do its work. That afternoon, I drove to her office building. Not to see her, to watch. She exited just after 5. Still flawless, still performing. But her eyes were scanning the crowd. She didn't see me, but I saw her. Check her phone, frown, glance over her shoulder. That was the first crack. She knew something was off. That night, Nate called. Bro, he said, you're not gonna like this, but you need to see it. He forwarded me a screenshot. Group chat. Internal. Her and 3 coworkers, Matt included. Jokes. Emojis. References to a weekend I didn't know she took. The caption under one message. He still has no idea. I didn't reply. I didn't scream. I didn't break the phone. I copied the image, filed it, and kept moving. This wasn't about betrayal anymore. This was strategy. Because when someone turns your life into a lie, you don't argue. You architect your exit. People think betrayal is loud, explosive, full of screaming and confrontation. It isn't. It's quiet. It happens in shared passwords, in synced calendars, in forgotten devices that still auto-backup without anyone realizing. That's where I started. I remembered the old iPad she used to use before upgrading. It had become a kitchen device, recipes, Spotify, background noise during breakfast. She hadn't touched it in months. But she never logged out. I pulled it from the drawer in our house the next day while she was still at work. I didn't need to rush. She didn't know I was even back. I turned it on. The battery was dead. I plugged it in, waited. Took a walk around the block while it came to life. When I returned, it was ready. One swipe, and I was in her world. iMessages, notes, voice memos. I didn't look for emotion. I wasn't after pain. I was after facts. The first thing I found was a pinned conversation with Matt, titled with a nickname I'd never heard. His messages were cocky. Hers, flirtatious, obvious, and filled with timestamps that matched the dates she told me she was working late or helping a friend move. There were photos, too. Not explicit. Worse. Candid. Intimate. Comfortable. The kind of pictures people take when they think they've gotten away with something. She talked about me once in the thread. Said, he's a good guy, but too good. Makes me feel small. I didn't feel small reading that. I felt done. I saved everything to a secure folder. Backed it up. Forwarded it to an account she didn't know existed. I checked the voice memos next. She'd recorded one during a drive. Probably didn't mean to keep it. Matt's voice, faint but clear. What if he finds out? Her response, he won't. He trusts me. That line stayed with me. She wasn't scared I'd leave. She was certain I'd never look. That was her fatal miscalculation. By the time she texted me that evening, can we talk later? I already had everything I needed. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. I'd crossed a line internally. I was no longer her husband. I was the architect of my exit. Not for revenge. For freedom. And I was just getting started. She thought I'd come home. That was her first mistake. By the time she finished typing, can we talk later? I was already halfway across the state. No dramatic exit. No slammed door. Just silence. The plan was simple. I redirected my direct deposit to a new account. Removed her as a co-signer from every financial tool we shared. Paused the shared credit cards. Disabled the backup phone line she never used but always relied on. She wouldn't notice right away. That was the point. By the time she did, I'd be gone without leaving a single thread to pull. I stayed in a rental cabin near the lake, one she didn't know about. I brought only what mattered: a laptop, the folder of evidence, a duffel bag, and the keys to my old truck. Not the one she posted for Instagram. The one she forgot existed. My phone. Turned off. I logged out of every account we shared. Changed passwords. Set up new ones. I didn't ghost her. I amputated the version of me she thought she owned. On day 2, I got my first email from her office email address. Just checking in. You okay? I archived it. On day 3, she called my mom. My mom, God bless her, just said, he's not ready to talk. That was all. No betrayal. Just boundaries. By day 4, she drove to my brother's house. Waited outside. He didn't invite her in. Said, he'll reach out when he's ready. She left after 10 minutes. That night, she posted a quote on Instagram. Healing. Growth. Something generic. But the background was telling. She was alone. No wine glass. No dinner setup. Just a caption and silence. By the end of the week, I'd transferred ownership of the house utilities into her name, terminated our joint insurance, and filed the initial paperwork. She didn't know yet, but I was already on the other side of the wall. I wasn't hiding. I was preparing. Disappearance isn't about absence. It's about erasure. Not for drama. For clarity. And by the time she realized she was alone, it would already be over. You don't hit a man like Matt head on. Guys like him thrive on chaos. They want reaction, noise, confrontation. So I didn't give him any of that. Instead, I studied him. 2 days at the cabin, I dug through every scrap of information I could find about his professional life. His LinkedIn, company mentions, alumni groups. I knew he was on shaky ground at work. He wasn't a top performer, but he was visible. And visibility, in the wrong hands, becomes liability. He'd recently pitched himself as a candidate for a promotion, one that would put him on a leadership track. I knew because she bragged about it once. Matt's finally pulling it together, she said, back when I still listened. Now, I saw the weakness. See, their company had a strict policy about inter-office relationships, especially between project leads and direct teammates. Not because of morality, but because of legal exposure. They'd had a scandal 2 years ago. Big one. Quietly buried, but HR had tightened the screws since. Matt's name came up in a shared project folder I still had access to from her work-issued Google account. I wasn't supposed to see it, but access hadn't been revoked. He was now managing a cross-functional team, including her, and I had messages, screenshots, dates, proof of personal involvement during working hours. But I didn't send it to HR. That would be too direct, too traceable. I created a burner email, sent everything anonymously to the company's internal compliance tip line, labeled it documentation for review, possible violation of policy 4.3. No threats, no drama, just truth with timestamps. It would take a few days, maybe weeks, but when it hit, it would be clean. She'd never know it came from me. I would be blindsided, and I wouldn't be in the room when it happened. That's the thing about tactical silence. It lets the truth detonate without you having to light the fuse. And while the structure began to shake from beneath them, I simply kept walking. No confrontation, no warnings, just removal. And when they looked around for someone to blame, I'd already vanished. The thing about control is, it's only real when no one notices you've lost it. At first, she tried to act like everything was fine. Brunch with her sister, group photos with friends, a story post from a wine bar, laughing a little too loudly, pretending the world hadn't shifted under her feet. But something in her smile was cracked. It started with a conversation she wasn't meant to overhear. A colleague, someone junior, whispered after a team meeting, "I thought they had a no-dating rule." The other one shrugged. Maybe HR just hasn't caught up yet. She laughed it off. But later that same day, her access to an internal client dashboard was revoked. Quietly. No explanation. Matt. He went dark on Slack. A week earlier, he couldn't stop messaging her. Now, silence. Her assistant noticed too. Said, "You okay? You seem, I don't know, off." She smiled, said she was just tired. But tired didn't explain why the department had suddenly asked for a one-on-one, or why HR sent a calendar invite for a policy review session. She called me that night. 3 times. Left a message on the 4th. "I don't know what's going on. If this is about the gala, can we just talk?" I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Her voice sounded strained, like someone starting to realize they were no longer the center of the story. But the real break didn't happen at work. It happened at her cousin's birthday dinner. They'd always adored her. Stylish, funny, accomplished. The golden couple, they used to say. Until I wasn't there. Until someone, maybe unintentionally, maybe not, asked, "So, where's your husband tonight?" She said I was traveling. Another lie. But this time, her cousin's wife raised an eyebrow. Someone else looked away. They didn't say it, but she felt it. Doubt. Silence. Distance. One of them muttered later, loud enough to carry. "You really thought no one would notice?" That line hit harder than anything I could have said. Because when trust erodes in public, people don't confront. They withdraw. By the end of the night, her smile was practiced. Her hands shook just enough to spill wine on her dress. No one rushed to help. And when she got home, her key no longer worked in the front door. She didn't knock right away. The security camera showed her standing outside for 5 full minutes, just staring at the door she once walked through like it was hers. The same door she now couldn't open. I didn't answer, just watched from the upstairs window, behind the curtain. She looked smaller now, not because she'd lost weight, because she'd lost presence. Eventually, she knocked, then rang, then knocked again. No shouting, no anger, just desperation. She sat on the steps. I let her sit. An hour passed, then another. She finally stood, looked up at the camera like she knew I was there, and whispered something I couldn't hear. Then she left. No dramatic collapse. No final plea. Just silence. That night, I slept better than I had in weeks. In the following days, she tried new angles. Emails from unknown addresses, calls from friends pretending they'd lost my number, even a letter left at the front desk of my office. Each one said the same thing without saying it. She didn't expect to lose access. She thought I'd break eventually. But when a man has already bled in silence, he doesn't reopen the wound for sympathy. I wasn't angry anymore. Anger implies attachment. I was past that. My lawyer had filed the papers. The house was being sold. Accounts closed. Ties severed. I saw her once at a cafe across town. Pure coincidence. She spotted me. Froze. I nodded once. She took a step forward. I didn't. She stopped mid-step. The look in her eyes wasn't panic. It was recognition. She finally understood that the version of me she once manipulated was gone. Not hidden. Transformed. And that version wouldn't answer her texts. Wouldn't explain himself. Wouldn't carry her guilt just to make her feel lighter. Because I had become untouchable, not by rising above her, by stepping outside the game entirely. She kept watching me that day, long after I turned away. And when I left, I didn't look back. She was no longer a part of my world, just a spectator outside of it. She waited outside my office. Didn't call ahead. Didn't message. Just showed up, standing by the coffee truck across the street like she was there by accident. But she wasn't. I saw her through the window. She didn't look away. When I stepped outside, she approached slowly, like someone crossing thin ice. "I just need 5 minutes," she said. Her voice was steady, but her eyes weren't. I didn't speak. Just stood there. She took that as permission. Started talking fast, like she had to outrun the silence. Said she didn't know how things got so far. Said she made mistakes. Said she never stopped caring. I let her speak, because none of it mattered. She tried to explain away the messages, the calls, the nights she lied. She framed it all as confusion, pressure, stress. She even cried. Said she missed me. But crying isn't a currency I trade in anymore. Not after everything. When she finally stopped, the silence between us felt louder than her words ever did. I looked at her the way you look at an old photograph, something that used to mean everything, but now belongs to another life. I said only one thing. "This isn't your story anymore." Her face collapsed. No scream. No collapse to the ground. Just that stunned stillness people get when they realize they're no longer holding the steering wheel. She asked, "Is it really over?" I didn't answer. She already knew. She tried one last time. Reached for my hand like muscle memory took over. I stepped back. That one move said more than any monologue ever could. Because real closure doesn't come with a fight. It comes when one person finally realizes the other one isn't reachable anymore. Not emotionally, not physically, not even as an idea. She watched me walk away that day. Didn't follow. Didn't yell. She knew it was done. But not because I said so. Because I no longer needed to. And that's the difference between leaving and being already gone. Collapse doesn't always happen with an explosion. Sometimes it's a slow unraveling, quiet, private, humiliating in ways that no one talks about out loud. I heard from a mutual friend, someone neutral, someone who didn't pick sides. He didn't call to gossip. He just said, "Thought you should know. Things aren't looking good for her." Her job hadn't fired her, but they'd reassigned her. Stripped her of visibility. New title, less impact. No one explained why. She knew. But knowing doesn't stop the descent. Matt. He was taking time off. Voluntary, of course. But no one believed that. Their messages had been reviewed. The timeline didn't lie. The fallout wasn't theatrical. It was administrative. And that's worse. Because it means no one even bothers to confront you. They just erase you from importance. She moved out of our old place. Too expensive now. Sold most of what we bought together. Canceled the gym membership she used to brag about. Stopped posting pictures altogether. When people stop performing for the world, that's when you know the mask broke. She started going to places I used to go. Old haunts. Coffee shops I once loved. Friends told me she asked about me. Casually, carefully. Like she didn't want it to sound like a reach. But it was. She was reaching because the silence had started echoing back. The people who once cheered her on now kept their distance. Not because of what she did, but because they didn't want to be associated with collapse. That's how isolation works. No judgment. Just absence. I wasn't watching her fall. I was just no longer in the frame. The photos that used to show us laughing? Gone. The playlists we made together? Deleted. The memories? Archived where they couldn't be accessed. And through it all, she waited. For a sign. A message. A crack in the silence. But I didn't send one. Not out of cruelty. But because there was nothing left to say. Her fall wasn't about me anymore. It was about who she became when the lie stopped working. And I was no longer around to catch her. There was no grand ending. No final confrontation. No dramatic rain-soaked confession. No music swelling as two people collided in one last embrace. It ended in a whisper, so quiet, it didn't even need to be spoken aloud. I saw her one last time. Not by design. I'd gone back to the city for work. Walked into a building I hadn't entered in months. Elevator opened. She stood there. Alone. She saw me before I registered her. Her face cracked, not broken, just tired. A trace of who she used to be clung to her posture, but the energy was gone. The moment froze. Not because it mattered, but because we both knew it would be the last. She didn't speak. Neither did I. We stood in silence for a heartbeat longer than was comfortable. Then I stepped inside, pressed my floor. She didn't move. When the doors closed, she stayed behind. Just like everything else. That's the thing no one tells you about endings. They rarely happen with fireworks. It's quiet. Clinical. You just stop showing up. That night, I walked past our old block. The building still stood. Same paint. Same entrance. But it wasn't ours anymore. It belonged to strangers. People who didn't know what we lost inside those walls. I looked up at the window where we used to argue. Where we used to lie. Where she used to perform. No lights on. Just stillness. I didn't feel anger. Or regret. Or longing. Just peace. Not because I healed. But because I chose distance over destruction. Some people fight to get even. I fought to get free. Back home, I unpacked the last of my boxes. New space. New layout. No echoes of her voice in the walls. No traces of what we used to be. I sat down, opened my laptop, and deleted the final folder that held her name. Not out of hate, but because it was done. No return. No loophole. No shared memories to romanticize. And if she ever tells the story, she'll say I disappeared. But that's not true. I just stopped showing up where I wasn't respected. That's the last thing I ever gave her. Silence. Real men don't explode. They exit. Subscribe for more power stories.